Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming and joining us here today for our Digital Spotlight. My name's Lyle Wraxall. I'm the Chief Executive of Digital Isle of Man, and today I just want to talk to you around what our plan has been for 2023, where we are on that journey, and maybe start teasing a few of the concepts we're looking at for next year. I see a lot of familiar faces in here, so some of you would have seen this format before, which really just try to be quite transparent about where we are with our targets. So you're going to see a lot of numbers and a few graphs, so just to ready yourself for that. So we set out our program at the beginning of this year that was published. We did that in consultation with many of the businesses. We had a large conference in November of last year called Digital IOM, where we went through the program and we agreed some of the outcomes that we were looking for. Earlier in the summer, we produced a slide that looked very similar to this, which was our outcomes as of halfway through the year. And notably, there are some key pieces on there around 90 e-gaming licenses, which meant that we'd achieved our target. We had a target of 90 at the beginning of the year, and 84 new jobs. Now, that number of 84 new jobs was a little lower than we'd hoped for. Halfway point of the year, we should have been at 150 jobs. So I want to give you a little bit of an update of where we are with some of these numbers, just to bring that up to date. So in order to do that, our target for this year, 300 new jobs created and filled in the digital sector. Out of June, we're at 84 out of 150. We're at just over 50% of our target. That was a little bit disappointing for us as an agency. So as you'd expect, we took a bit of remedial action. We went out there and tried to make sure that we were focused on the account management side of our businesses. We're talking to our businesses on Ireland to understand where we are from a growth perspective. As of the end of August, we had achieved 151 new jobs, so we were at just over 75% of our target against our run rate. And we're optimistic at the end of this month we're going to be around 200, so we're catching up. So still reasonably optimistic that we're going to achieve our target of 300 for the end of the year. It's always difficult to follow a linear path and to make sure that all of our wins are ordered through the year like that. But I think it's testament to the team, the fact they can get out there and, push the accelerator button and start catching up. So that's really good to see. So what's this mean? So for e-gaming, we have a target of 200 jobs for this year. We've achieved 100 of those now, so we're at 50% of that end of year target. E-gaming has been a really interesting year. We've had more licenses this year than we've seen for a long, long time. 22 license approvals this year. You'll notice we're not 100% anymore of 90 licenses. We're actually at 89. Every now and again, people will hand a license in, and this is part of our challenge in terms of keeping on to these numbers. So we do have some more licenses approved waiting to be paid, so we're expecting this number to come back up again shortly. But right now, unfortunately, we're at 89, not 90. And we also had a focus that we started driving through in 2022 about moving into new markets. And we did some work in Latin America. We looked at Africa. We looked at India as markets that we could get some new traction in. We therefore set a target for 2 new licenses into new locations this year. We have achieved that. One has gone into Brazil and the other one facing into India. So we're starting to see some our licensing having further reach previously, which is also fantastic to see. On the fintech side, some of you remember that we used to call this blockchain and then blockchain and fintech, and now it's just fintech. So it's the evolution of a lot of the work we did around blockchain and cryptocurrency. We are seeing more true fintech businesses come to the island, whilst we still have a healthy crypto asset sector. It is widening. In terms of jobs, we're probably not quite where we hope to be. So we're at 30% of our target at the moment. So again, this is another area that we need to push. We expected the FinTech Innovation Challenge to start driving this forward, and we have seen growth as a result, which I'll touch on a bit later. But we're still trying to push that through. It's a difficult sector for us because this is an area we share with our sister agency, Finance Isle of Man. So there's a bit of a shared level of success with this as we try to drive this forward and uncover whether these businesses are fintech or whether they are pure financial services. We've had a number of new designated business registrations this year in this space, so 4 out of the 10. So we need to continue to push that forward on, and we've achieved 1 new licensed business in this space as well. So I mentioned the FinTech Innovation Challenge. We ran we actually launched this in November last year. We ran it through last year, and we had a finale in June. We had 73 applications from 20 different countries that applied into the event, and we ran a final of the final sort of period of 16 businesses, of which there were 3 winners across the categories that we announced. The day itself was actually far more held together and far more compelling than even I'd expected it to be. It was a real good energy for those of you who managed to attend there. There's just really strong energy there. The coming together of businesses acting as mentors, the judges, these off-island businesses working to solve our problems was really fantastic to see. Of the audience, 94% of the audience on the day said they would like to see something like this again in the next year. That was a really high number. That's probably one of the most positive outcomes we've had when we've done any of these kind of events. So that was hugely positive. An interesting one, 50% of the finalists would put themselves through it again. Whether that was the desire to actually go on and win some of these categories or exactly why that was really interesting. But it was a fantastic challenge, and it's one that we will be running again. So this year, we have widened out the challenge, and we're working again with our sister agency, Finance Isle of Man. We've also are going to be working with Business Isle of Man, who will be joining us on this as well. And we will continue working with our regulated bodies and other parts of government to drive this forward. You'll see some more of the sort of tri-agency branding on this as we all work together to try to get this off the ground. But there will be 3 categories this year. So last year we wholly focused on fintech. That's going to be one of our key categories this year. We're also going to be looking at data and artificial intelligence. Now that's very much built around some concepts that we've been working on for well over a year in the data space. And I think we've all become aware of AI, which again I'm going to touch on later, and some of the opportunities around that. Business Isle of Man were really keen to do something in the clean tech space, so they've come and joined us and are driving a clean tech part of this challenge. And it also works really well with our Smart Island initiative that we've spoken about before. So we're driving this wider innovation challenge, which I think really plays into some of the strengths we have here on the Isle of Man. Our status as a biosphere nation, and we will be actually having a workshop next week on what some of the problems and some of the opportunities that we can put out to the market to get involved with us on these 3 challenges. So I think that's going to be really exciting for next year. As we look forward to what that's going to look like, we're doing some of the groundwork for this now. We will do the official global launch of this challenge in November at the Digital IOM event, and we'll be working again with business and finance to launch that on the day. Applications will be open from that day, and we'll run an applications process through to February. We will whittle those applications down to a finalist group, and then as last year, we'll bring businesses, mentors, government together and regulators together to work with these businesses to understand, make sure they understand the problems we're trying to solve and get the best solutions possible, so that will accelerate our growth here on the island. We expect to have a final around the end of June again next year, so a date to be determined. I'd encourage all of you who've got an interest in this to get involved. It is a cross-island event. It's where everyone really needs to kind of put as much into this. The more we put into it, the more we'll get out of it as an island. So we've also talked about esports, and that was a big part of our program this year. We've had quite a challenging time when it's come to esports. We've been running it for a few years now. Last year, I reported that we'd gone out, we'd worked with a lot of esports businesses, and we talked about the possibility of creating some regulation that was going to support their sector. It was very clear from those workshops that we held that whilst regulation was something that they saw benefit in the short term, they didn't really have money in the industry to be able to accept regulation, and actually the whole concept of it was rather terrifying. So we, at the beginning of this year, looked at our strategy and tried to understand how we could move this forward and how we could work differently. Esports is 1% of the global video games industry in the world, and mostly 75% of that 1% is driven by marketing spend. So where we think there's a lot of opportunity in esports, there's far more opportunity in video games. There's a lot of ancillary opportunity in video games as well. And for an island of our size, there's more than enough opportunity to make something of. So what we decided to do is to go out to the video games industry, not neglecting esports, but understanding they have a bit more money, and there were more businesses at a scale-up stage who are looking somewhere to house their IP, looking for some of the benefits that the Isle of Man could offer them. In end of Q2 this year, we started putting this proposition out, and we went around to different shows. And we have actually seen that it's been quite an easy sell in terms of what the Isle of Man is to the video games industry. So whilst we've only got 20% of our new jobs, we've only started that reasonably recently, the pipeline is actually quite healthy. So I'm hoping as we get towards the end of the year that we'll see an acceleration of that number, and we'll see those numbers tick up. What we still have to do, and we haven't done very well yet, is to work with our own businesses on the island, our CSPs, our banks, our data industries, to really make sure that they're seeing benefit from this as well, and they're being introduced to these businesses and they're working with them. So that's another key area of focus for us as we move forward. But the final one, the refresh strategy, was approved by the board earlier this year. So again, that's what we've been working to at the moment. We are going to have to review this sector, and we will be doing this in the coming months around, is this something we carry on with next year? Is there still enough benefit? Because that's really important. And I think, I'm certainly excited about this as a gamer myself. I do, this resonates with me, but we have to make sure that as an agency, we're putting our effort into the right place. So we'll be doing a deep dive on this relatively shortly. So Smart Island has been another one that's been ticking on for a few years. It started off as Internet of Things. We started last year, we decided to be more outcome focused. Let's try to get data that's going to help us make the right decisions as an island. We have certainly had some issues with this as we've gone through this year. We have struggled to create a data distribution platform, which in itself is quite a simple thing to do. And that has had a knock-on effect with some of the projects that we're looking to deliver. What we have done really well, and we did early, is to have champions from across government identified who see the benefit of the Smart Island concept, that can see that the government, this gives us the government opportunity to be more transparent, to be able to provide information to people in real time that they can act on and make real decisions about. I think we understand in DFE that businesses can then use that data to actually drive business benefit and drive the economy as well. we need to be able to step over where we are today and move into next year and actually get into this economic growth element of this particular program. The Digital Board will be sitting down next week to do a deep dive into this particular program to understand how we release some of that value. And I think it's important still that the government is seen as a leader in this, and that we are driving government projects. We are increasing productivity, we're increasing transparency, and embracing technology in healthy ways. But we need to have this data distribution platform in place to be able to support that. So our expectation at the moment is we could probably achieve 70% of this year, and we can mop up the rest next year. The challenge we have to understand is how do we really get the economic benefit out of this program. That being said, the list of projects that we're looking at here are really exciting, and things that resonate. And I do like it when we're using technology for societal good. And there's some great examples of that as we look through this pipeline. Data was a new concept for us in 2023, and it's actually a terrifying topic to try to dig down deeply into. So essentially, off the back of the KPMG economic report, data was pulled out as one of the economic benefits that we could push over the next 10 years. We've had a report commissioned on what that could look like, and we didn't really get that sense of clarity around what could drive this forward. So we've spent a good part of this year trying to understand what can we do in the Isle of Man with data that is different to other parts of the world. So we, in doing this, we've started looking at what was going on in other parts of the world. And there are a number of jurisdictions now that are looking to put data into trusts. And there's a reason for that. That's about being able to either offset your data to somewhere else, or outsource your data to somebody else for them to manage. But a trust structure doesn't allow you to do that as well as it could. As it happens, we have a structure on the Isle of Man called the Foundations Act, which is a little bit similar to a trust, but we think it will allow you to do more. So currently we have a team of lawyers looking over this act so that we can understand if we can leverage this the way that we would like to with data. If we can, that allows us to create a concept of data stewardship. So if I'm a small business who collects data, and I don't really want that data, and I don't want the headache of dealing with that data, I could pass that to a foundation to manage that data on my behalf. If I'm an organisation that is struggling to have trust because of the way that I'm managing data, I can pass that data to another organisation with a set of rules so that that trust is transparent and it can be dealt with by another party. Or if I want to pool my data with another business that might be a competitor, or we don't want to actually share our data sets, then we could also put that into a foundation, and that would allow that data to be monetized or to be leveraged for other benefit without it being a complicated headache for those businesses. So we need to verify that those use cases are viable and possible through the legal construct that we have at the moment with the Foundations Act. We're about 90% sure that it will be at the moment. As we launch the challenge, this is going to be one of those challenge statements that we put out there. How can you use this structure that we've created or identified to manage data in a different way? So I think we're pretty much ready to launch with this now. We've done the analysis. We've got a program plan based around the infrastructure, and the governance structure will be coming before the end of the year. Digital Academy, we did talk about a lot last year. We all know skills has been the #1 issue across all 4 agencies since they've been created. We had this concept of creating a digital academy quickly based off work that we've seen from other jurisdictions. And we were going to do that on an interim basis until a central government group was set up to be able to deal with a strategy. Now, as it happened, the workforce and skills strategy has been set up now, so that is in place. And as such, we've put this on hold while this, as a requirement, can feed into that bigger strategy group, which is involving both the DfE, the Department of Education and Chamber of Commerce, so they can work together to create a holistic plan of how we move forward with a cohesive workforce strategy. We still think this has got some legs, and we will continue and do continue to feed requirements into that group. But it seemed mistimed to go ahead and do this year when there was another group already looking at it. So hence that was agreed to be put on hold. And infrastructure. So infrastructure is becoming more and more of a complex kind of bucket of items. The big piece of work that this has been pushing for the past few years is the National Broadband Plan, something that certainly I've had personally a lot of feedback on since I've been here. But we are on track to hit our 90% of homes passed with fibre this year. The National Broadband Plan rollout should be complete by August next year. So we are on the final 10%, but also probably the trickiest 10% to try to get across the line. We wanted to increase the number of people taking up fibre when they have access to it. So we started the year at 30%. We want to hit the end of the year in 50% of connections. We are at 40% at the moment. So that is continuing. And you have to remember that as we're connecting people, more people are getting availability. So this is a forever sliding dial as we're trying to move that forward. And we did commit to having a proposition agreed to how we connect the final 1% of people who don't have fibre available to them. Now, we haven't done that yet, but we do acknowledge that 1% of the island are already using alternative technologies to connect to the internet. Starlink is something that's become more prevalent on the island in the past couple of years. And we, as a board, decided that we would put this on hold until we had more information around what final 1% are, where they are on the island. So there's no point in us saying they can use Starlink or they can use 4G if they're in areas where that's not going to work for them. So whilst I think we've got a good catalogue of solutions available to roll out, we need to have a bit more detail about exactly who this is going to affect to make sure we can suggest the right solutions for them when we get to that point. And we will be able to do that next year. So beyond all of that, which was in our plan for 2023, artificial intelligence seemed to have come out of absolutely nowhere and taken us by surprise. We knew it was coming. We did talk about it in our plan, but we didn't expect this to be a key area of focus until 2024. This is something that has taken quite a lot of our time over the past 3 or 4 months. And I think for a good reason. I think that this has a real opportunity to drive us forward as an island. So the technology itself is obviously very interesting, but really what's it going to do for us as an island is where the focus has been. I think many of us have probably seen future of work studies. What's AI going to mean for the future of work? What jobs are at risk of being displaced? How do we need to change as a workforce to be able to deal with that? What are the ethical considerations around AI? How should we use it? When should we use it? When shouldn't we use it? And what does that mean for data security? Some of the how do we need to be wary of that in terms of government data, people data? So there's some really big questions. Does it need to be regulated? And what does that regulation look like? Now, this isn't just the Isle of Man looking at this. This is globally, everybody looking at this. You'd have heard about the US looking at regulation. The EU have got a sort of draft concept of how this could be regulated. The UK talking very much about that as well. And us as the Isle of Man and the Digital Isle of Man team are getting involved in forums to learn and to input into those considerations as well. But in terms of our focus around driving the economy, what can we do? So across the digital team, every single member of the digital team has had some kind of introduction to ChatGPT as a productivity tool. Half the team at the moment are actually going through a 5-week training course on how this can help them be more productive in their jobs. That's not just about creating productivity for ourselves. That enables us, when we talk to businesses, to have first-hand experience of how this has changed our jobs, and we need to kind of expose that and talk about it a bit more. We've had other members of the team going through a lot of research forums. So again, whether that's UK or EU-based forums, understanding what concerns other governments have around AI and what that does, and how should we consider that in terms of what that means for the Isle of Man. And in early October, a few of us will be going out to Singapore to meet with a team there, AI Singapore. Singapore were very early on their journey with AI. We want to go out there and understand why they did that, what benefit have they seen, how's it grown the economy, what can we bring back here? And we're not saying it's the same, because it absolutely won't be the same, but what can we bring back here, and what does that mean for the Isle of Man? So why am I excited about this? Why do we think AI is important for the Isle of Man? Well, we have a very clear strategy to grow the economy in the island. We also have a real issue in terms of having skills and workforce to be able to drive that economic strategy. We have a tool here that can absolutely help us be more productive. Many of the reports are citing 55% productivity for people who are using AI. Now, I think that might be quite high across our entire economy, but if we just get 20% productivity gain, and we're seeing that in terms of improved business, and we're able to do that with the same workforce, that's going to drive the right things. It's going to be good for business on the Isle of Man. On the Isle of Man, we're small enough also to really do some exciting things with AI that will then drive other benefits as well. So our view is off the back of our visit to Singapore, to work with the Digital Isle of Man board to accelerate our thinking on AI and have a solid plan of things that we can achieve in 2024 that we will be discussing at Digital Isle in November of this year. So that's it from me. I'm going to invite our panel members and moderator up on the stage so we can open the floor to questions. And I look forward to hearing what you come up with. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everyone. Just move that down a bit. Lyle's a bit taller than me. I'd just like to start by making introductions. So we have Abby Kimber here, who is our Head of Strategic Partnerships. We have Mrs. Corlett, who is our political member for Digital Isle of Man, and we have Richard Oliphant, who is Head of Digital Infrastructure and Telecoms for Digital Isle of Man, and of course Lyle, who we all know. So I'm going to get straight into this because we only have 13 minutes or so. Lyle, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to start with skills. Skills are such a critical issue for the island. You've highlighted in your presentation that the Digital Academy is on hold. So I think it might be worth just expanding a little bit around that, but also, what is Digital Isle of Man doing to support the challenges around skills in the sector?
Yeah, I think and skills is definitely one of those topics that keeps me up at night. It is a real challenge. The ambition we have as Digital Isle of Man for skills is incredibly high. We have some really passionate individuals who want to do a lot more than we've been seen to do with skills. And it's disappointing to me and for many of us in the team that we haven't really achieved the goals we wanted to in skills over the past years. I am hopeful that a cross-government skills and workforce group is the right answer to drive a holistic island approach to how we solve this, because as I said in my presentation, it's certainly not just a digital thing, neither is it just an Isle of Man thing. This is, skills are a challenge for everybody globally at the moment. However, as a small jurisdiction, you would think that we'd have benefit to being able to support people in upskilling and cross-skilling more easily. As a tight-knit community, we do have that ability to share information and share knowledge across each other. I think we have proposed a number of times in the past having a focal area for people to learn together that we can use for free or heavily subsidised training courses. And I think that vision still holds true. And I think, fortunately, that's a vision that's also reflected back from the skills and workforce team as well. So there are some obvious places for that. UCM is been part of these discussions, and we've worked closely with the UCM around what can they do in the short term to support skills development. There is a challenge we're aware of around businesses not perhaps wanting to go and do their training at UCM, or not wanting to do it over a long period of time, but be able to make those accessible. We did run a online free training course for up to 300 people last year, and that was only 50% subscribed to, and there was a very high dropout rate. So that wasn't a solution that resonated with people, which we thought it would. So this needs a lot of thought and around it. We will continue to champion the need for this. As I say, it's certainly not falling on deaf ears. It's a very well understood issue. We just need to start actually having some tactical wins and start moving the needle on that, and that's what we all want to see.
Okay, thanks for that, Lyle. Just as a reminder, the Slido is open, the QR code is there, so if you do want to submit any questions for the panel, please feel free to do so. I see we do have one coming already, which I'll move to in a second. Richard, I'm going to move on to you. You've been instrumental in driving the National Broadband Plan forward and getting fibre all around the island. How, in your view, has the fibre rollout benefited businesses around the island, and what are the challenges to reach that final 1% of premises?
Thanks, Phil. So the National Broadband Plan, as Lyle said in his presentation, is currently passing about 90% of the island's businesses and premises. We're hoping to see about 45% of those connected by the end of the year, which is really fantastic. Why did we start doing this? Well, I think you can see that any telecommunications network underpins both the economic growth of an island or a jurisdiction. And we also see it used more and more now for social inclusion and communication. So it's a really vital tool. When we started down this path, the UN Broadband Commission was advocating that every single member of the UN should have some sort of fully funded, government-funded broadband plan by 2025. So we're clearly well ahead of that, and which is one of the things that we were driving to achieve. And we're also recently seeing that the EU is now introducing a new act, 1 Gigabit Act, that is making sure that every populated area in the EU has a 1 gigabit connection in populated areas. So it's clearly something that every jurisdiction thinks is important to drive economic growth. I think what highlighted this more than anything, really, over the last few years has been COVID, when everyone was just sent home. All of a sudden, everyone needed to be able to educate their children. They needed to be able to shop online. They needed to be able to work remotely. These networks have suddenly become more and more important to the population as a whole. We saw businesses having to react to those COVID days, and all of a sudden businesses that maybe weren't online all of a sudden had to go online and start selling their wares, whether they were selling food or whether they were selling their own products and services. So we've really seen the internet come into its own over the last few years, which has made it really important to businesses as a whole. The final 1% is an interesting conundrum. You'd think on a small island we should be able to hit 100%, but we do have some really, really remote and rural premises on the island, regardless of its size and shape. And we have some really interesting geography to try and drive the fibre down. So that final 1%, I think, is probably going to be the hardest part of the National Broadband Plan in terms of achieving 100% coverage for gigabit connectivity, as the EU would like us to have. And I think, as Lyle said, it's absolutely right that we're going to have to consider alternative technologies for those final 1%. They are extremely remote, extremely expensive to serve, and difficult to get to. And I think Lyle's right, there's going to be different technologies that are going to have to be thrown into the mix, and that could be a 5G. Obviously, the UK is now starting to look at 6G already. and we're now starting to think about whether satellite services might provide them that connectivity they need.
Thanks, Richard. So, Abby, I'm going to move on to you now. You're head of strategic partnerships. One of the roles of Digital IOM is to be a consistent liaison point with the industry. So can you give an insight into how Digital IOM achieves that and how many businesses you're currently working with?
So in an ideal world, when a digital business would start up in the Isle of Man or move across to the Isle of Man, a little buzzer would go off in Digital Isle of Man. We'd, jump to action and interact with that business, but unfortunately that doesn't happen. We work with a number of businesses within the tech sector, but also supporting the tech sector as well, and that's a really, really important part of it. Currently, we manage about 184 businesses, and we manage them all in slightly different ways. For the businesses, core tech businesses, we work with them to ensure that they've got everything that they need to grow, help to track any barriers to business. We recognise that we can't always fix it, but what we can do is make sure we've got that critical mass of feedback into other areas of government. And, ultimately, if one business is saying something and then 30 businesses are saying something, it's obviously an issue that needs to be solved. We work with core technology businesses in that way, but we also work with our service providers to help to do like a collaborative business development approach. We use them and us together to help to attract new people to the Isle of Man, but also provide an ecosystem that supports tech businesses here. Tech businesses want people that understand how they work and can support them in their business growth as well. So, so we're relying on businesses to come to us. If you've started up in the Isle of Man, if you've perhaps moved across to the Isle of Man and we haven't managed to catch you within our opportunity pipeline and worked with you at events off island, we encourage people to get in touch with us because there's probably lots of things that you might not realise that we can help you with. So yes, absolutely, we continue to create platforms for this. So we have eClub, which is our quarterly networking event. But also, we're a friendly bunch. You can get in touch with us on social media or, through the mailbox or, even just pop into the DFE office. And, we'd be really happy to sit down and let you know how we can help you.
Thanks, Abby. So we've had a few questions coming from the floor. We do have limited time. Mrs. Corlett, I'm going to come back to you to round off, but just going to ask a couple of these that have come through. So the first question, I'll just open this up to the floor. What is our government doing to be more digital to promote unity across departments?
So a very good question. It's probably difficult to see from the outside, but we are working closer and closer across government. In fact, that has been one of the focus areas of the digital team this year, is to try to work cross-agency and cross-department more than we've have done before. A big part of that is with GTS, Government Technology Services, who drive our infrastructure. So when the GTS strategy was created last year, we worked closely with them to look at what we were looking to achieve from an economic perspective, what the demands of government was, and what the expectations of society was, to try to create a plan that would work for all of us. Technology can take a time to change, especially when you've got a large sort of infrastructural project like the government. But if you do take the time to look at the GTS plan, there are some strong aspirations that I think should resonate with most of us. I talked about open data earlier. That's articulated in the plan. The idea that we should have a single data set across government that we can share and we can allow API access to, again, to drive businesses forward. This is there. We've got a program at the moment called Tell Us Once, where we're trying to make sure that you only need to interact and tell the government something once, and that it populates all of the government systems. Sounds like a really simple thing, but again, when you have lots of systems that have been built up over time, they don't always talk to each other as well as they could. So it's very much on the roadmap. I think it is a case of there are many, many things to do, and they need to be prioritised, and they will be implemented on a prioritised basis.
Okay.
There.
So we've got 3 questions I still want to ask, and about 2 minutes, so I'm going to ask for brief answers now. First one is, are there any plans to incorporate the content creator segment as part of the digital strategy? Andorra, a similar jurisdiction, seems to be doing extremely well. I'll open that up to the floor.
I would say yes. So it's something we've talked about, and it's what context and where it falls under, but it's something that we have been aware of and we've discussed in the past, and we will look at again.
Okay, next question then. How can digital support those last few stalwarts who still insist on using wet signatures?
Yes, we have been working on a revised Electronic Transactions Act. In fact, I'd say, I don't think he's in the room, but our Head of Innovation, Kurt, has been championing that himself. We do expect to try to get that through. We just asked somebody to draft it for us to accelerate it. But there is also a change process that needs to follow that to make sure that people, and government in particular, do step away from wet signatures into a digital world.
Thank you. Okay, so last question. This is for Mrs. Corlett as the political member. Looking ahead to 2024, from your perspective, what does good look like for the digital sector?
Okay, that's a really broad question, I think, because if you asked anyone in the room, they may come up with different ideas. I mean, technology, digital, it touches all our lives in every way now. I mean, we've got children in school now that will have jobs and careers in spheres that we don't even know exist yet. So it's moving fast. I think we need to keep up with that. I would like to see... What was noticeable, actually, for me when I watched the presentation is... Politically, it's really important that you hit targets. And the targets that were hit seemed to be, to me, the way I was looking at it, was that when agency and department are working with businesses and individuals, we seem to be hitting targets. But where the challenge is where we have to collaborate with other government departments in order to achieve the aims. And what I'd like to see in the next year is more collaboration between government, its departments, its agencies, businesses, individuals, organisations, to try to achieve the things that we need to achieve. We're sitting at the conference today, and all of the issues that are being discussed, whether it's housing, health, education, energy and emissions, all of those can be helped to solutions through technology and digital transformation, and we really have to push on with that. So from my perspective, political perspective, that's really what I want to see: more working together, more collaboration, more to make this island our island of opportunity.
Perfect.